All right, thanks, guys. Happy Saturday. Couple of early games starting to finish up, but we do have some line for lines. We got more than one line. We do have some lines for Sunday's MLB action. And before we get into that, I just want to give a big shout out, a big thank you to my headline sponsor for today's program. That's Jimmy and the boys at GhostPicksATS.com. And if you like making money on sports, there's no reason why you shouldn't check out one or more of their very affordable money-making packages. That's Jimmy and the boys at GhostPicksATS.com. GhostPicksATS.com. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at our Sunday slate of baseball games and personal leans. All starts Eastern Standard Time. And leading off, we got Blue Jays, Red Sox, 105 Boston. And a 20-cent fade of the Sox at home here. They open $1.70 down to $1.50. Total open 10 down to 9.5. We got Stroman for the Jays, Johnson for the Sox. And despite the early fade of the Sox, they're actually a perfect 3-0 in their games where Brian Johnson makes the start. They've also won 8 of 11 head-to-head matchups with the Jays. Now, total-wise, Toronto's 81% to the over on the road at the current total or higher. We're also looking at 6 and 5 to the over in these teams' 11 head-to-head matchups. So with all those trends in mind, I'm going to lean toward the Red Sox outright and the over 9.5. Next game, Yankees, Indians, 110 Cleveland. The Indians are $1.20 up to $1.30. Total's 9 flat. The Yankees are catching the 1.5. And at the moment, we got Tanaka for New York, Bauer for Cleveland. But despite taking money in the early rounds of betting, this Red Sox team really struggles against the Bombers. And as a matter of fact, they dropped 4 of 5 head-to-head matchups with New York. They're also taking on a Yankees team who's winning 72% of their ball games versus teams over 500, really taking care of business in the first half of the season. Now, scoring-wise, good amount of overs between these two squads. 4-1 to the over in their 5 heads-up contests. We're also looking at 9 and 5 to the over when Tanaka makes the start on the bump. So with all those stats in mind, I'm going to go ahead and lean toward the Yankees in the return of Tanaka and the over 9 flat. All right, next game, Phil's Fish. Where's that? Oh, my goodness. That's all the way. There we go. Phil's Fish, 110 Miami. The Phils are $1.30. Total 7.5. 72% are leaning toward the Fightins. And at the moment, we got Zach Eflin for the Phillies. Jose Urena for the Marlins. And speaking of the Marlins, their strong fade is certainly warranted. They're just 4 and 14 in their games where Urena made the start. They're also taking on a Philadelphia squad who's 17 and 6 versus losing ball clubs, really putting away the Ham and Eggers. Now, total-wise, Urena starts did go just 7 and 11 to the over. Meanwhile, on the other side, just 5 out of 12 Eflin starts got over the line as well. So with all that info in mind, I'm going to go ahead and take the Phillies outright and the under 7.5. Next game, Nationals, Mets, 110 Flushing, Queens. The Nats are $1.30. Totals 9 flat. 71% are leaning Washington. And at the moment, we're looking at Hellickson for the Nats, Oswalt for the Mets. And speaking of the Mets, they've been terrible in these types of spots here. Just 2 and 13 in their games at the current moneyline price. They've also won just 5 of 25 ball games as the home underdog. Now, scoring-wise, the Mets did go 3-0 to the over in their couple of games at home when the line was 9 or higher. We're also looking at 5 and 3 to the over in these teams' 8 head-to-head matchups. So with all those trends in mind, I'm going to go ahead and take Hellickson minus 130 and the over 9 flat. Next game, Diamondbacks, Braves, 135 Atlanta. The Braves are the $1.10 favorites. Total was 8.5 down to 8 flat. And currently 55% of the betting public is leaning toward Atlanta. Now, pitching-wise, we're looking at Patrick Corbin for Arizona, Julio Teheran for Atlanta. And speaking of Atlanta, not a real streaky team. Gets a couple wins here, a couple wins there, but no real hot or cold runs as of late. That said, though, there is something to be said for consistency, as they've gone 10-7 in their games as the home underdog. They're also taking on a D-back squad who's dropped 3 out of their last 5. Now, total-wise, Arizona games are just 3-8 to the over on the road at the current posted total. Meanwhile, on the other side, Atlanta's just 15-25 to the over when taking on winning ball clubs. So all that said and done, I'm going to go ahead and lean toward the Atlanta Braves, grinding it out with the under 8 flat. Next game, Brewers, Pirates, 135 Pittsburgh, and a fade of the Pirates in the early going here as Milwaukee opened $1.05 up to $1.10. Total also opened 9 down to 8.5. Currently 62% are still leaning Milwaukee, and at the moment we got Jhoulys Chacin for the Crew, Joe Musgrove for the Buccos. And when it comes to this Pittsburgh team, they've really struggled against good pitching, which is pretty common. Just 15-21 versus teams allowing less than 4 runs per contest. They're also taking on a Jhoulys Chacin, who's led Milwaukee to a 14-6 record in their games where he makes the start. Now, total-wise, we actually could see some runs in this one. Pittsburgh's 20-11 to the over at home at the current total. They're also taking on a Milwaukee squad who's 4-0 to the over last 4, 7-2 to the over last 9. So all those stats in mind, I'm going to go ahead and take Milwaukee outright in the over 8.5. Next game, Royals, White Sox, 210 Chicago. The White Sox are $1.20. Total open 10 down to 9.5. 69% are also leaning Chicago. And at the moment, we're looking at Birch Smith, my favorite name in the game. Birch Smith for the Royals, Lucas Giolito for the Sox. And speaking of the Sox, they're actually real good against these Royals, despite being one of the worst teams in the league, 6-2 in their head-to-head matchups with Kansas City. Meanwhile, on the KC side of things, just terrible in games at the current price, 4-18 in their contests at the current moneyline odds. Now, total-wise, just 6-12 to the over in these Giolito starts. We're also looking at just 3-5 to the over in these teams' 8 head-to-head matchups. So with all that info in mind, I'm going to go ahead and lean toward the White Sox in the under 9.5. Next game, Tigers, Astros, 210 Houston. And no surprises here as Houston's the favorite, but their number is absolutely ginormous. 340 on the money line for these Houston Astros. Totals at 7.5, and 67% are leaning Houston. And at the moment, we got Francisco Liriano for the Tigers, Justin Verlander for the Astros. But despite being absolutely dominant this season, Houston's hit a bit of a rough patch, losing 2 out of their last 3 and 3 out of their last 5. They're also taking on a Detroit squad who's a remarkable, just kidding, they're not remarkable in anything, but they're taking on a remarkable price point, catching incredible plus money, and that's about it. But total-wise, Liriano starts did go just 5-9 to the over this year. Meanwhile, on the other side, Verlander starts went a stingy 7-13 to the over on the Houston side of things. So with all those trends in mind, and speculations really, why the hell not? Give me the Tigers catching some crazy plus money in the under 7.5. Next game, Reds, Cardinals, 215 St. Louis. And no surprises here as the Cards are the $1.60 favorites in this one. Total also open and remains at 9 flat. Currently 77% of the betting public's leaning toward the Cardinals. And at the moment, we got Anthony DeSclafani for Cincinnati, Miles Mikolas for St. Louis. And speaking of St. Louis, they've been dominant against their friends from Ohio, 9-2 in their head-to-head matchups with the boys from Cincy. They're also a solid 12-6 in their games where Miles Mikolas makes the start. Now, scoring-wise, Cincy's 6-1 to the over when DeSclafani makes the first pitch. Cincy's also gone 6-0 to the over in their last 6 and 13-2 to the over in their last 15. So all that said and done, I'm going to go ahead and take the Cardinals outright in the over 9 flat. Next game, Mariners, Rockies, 310 Colorado, and a 10-cent move toward the Rockies in the early going here. Colorado opened 135 up to 145. Total also opened 12 down to 11.5. Currently 55% of the public bettors are still leaning Rockies. And at the moment, we got Mike Leake for Seattle, Tyler Anderson for Colorado. But despite taking most of the early money in this one, this Rockies team is just 47% in their games at Coors Field. They're also taking on a Seattle team who's 13-6 in their Mike Leake starts. Now, total-wise, Leake starts did go 14-5 to the over so far in the season. Meanwhile, 3 out of these teams' 4 head-to-head matchups went over the line as well. So with all that information in mind, I'm going to go ahead and take Mike Leake catching the plus money in the over 11.5. All right, next game, that's going to be A's-Giants, 4:05 San Francisco, and a slight 5-cent fade of the Giants in the early going here. San Fran opened $1.25 down to $1.20. Total also opened 8.5 down to 8 flat. Currently 73% are leaning toward the Athletics. And at the moment, we got Sean Manaea for Oakland, Andrew Suarez for San Francisco. But despite the nickel fade of the Giants at home in the early going here, San Fran's a remarkable 20-9 in their games as the home favorite. They're also taking on an Oakland team who's always taking money when Manaea starts. That perfect game still fresh in the mind of the public bettors. So scoring-wise, Oakland's 6-13 to the over when Sean Manaea makes the start. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Giants, oddly enough, are just 39% to the over when facing teams allowing more than 4 runs per contest. So with all those factors in mind, I'm actually going to ride with the Giants winning this one outright and the under 8 flat. All right, I'm going to slide to my next and final game for the show. It's we're actually going to skip over the LA series. It's going to be Cubs-Padres, 4:10 San Diego. And Chicago is the $1.65 favorites on the road here. Total's 8 flat. An astounding 86% are still leaning Chicago. And at the moment, we got John Lester for the Cubbies, Eric Lauer for the Pods. And speaking of the Pods, they won just 6 of 22 ball games played at the current market price. They're also taking on a Cubbies squad who's a strong 15-3 when Big John makes the start. Now, total-wise, Big John has been getting some run support when he throws the first pitch, 9-9 to the over in his 18 starts this year. They're also taking on a San Diego squad who's 12-8 to the over at home at the current posted total. So with all those trends in mind, I'm going to take Cublies. I'm going to take the Clubbies. With all those trends in mind, I'm going to take the Cubbies run line and the over 8 flat. All right, folks, that is going to do it for me. But before I get out of here, I just have to remind you to check out my daily best play at patreon.com/BrockPage. And with a documented win percentage of 60% for the entire year of 2017, you're hurting yourself each and every day you're not subscribed. I also want to remind you to check out my headline sponsor. That's Jimmy and the boys at GhostPicksATS.com. Jimmy and his team of young, hungry, expert consultants at GhostPicks are the most passionate in the business. And if you thought I was good at handicapping games, these guys are amongst the best in the industry. And as always, thank you for watching today's program. I hope you enjoyed all this great free information. And please don't forget to check out my daily best play at patreon.com/BrockPage.